On this episode of The Open Road, we're doing something very different. This is the Can-Am Ryker. This is the Rally Edition, so it's the 900cc. It's, as you can see, very, very different. I actually have nothing to compare this to, so this won't be a review so much as me figuring this out with you, which should be interesting. A lot of you guys will remember the old Can-Am trikes that they had, which were kind of like a gold wing but with two wheels at the front. This is very, very different to look at, so I assume it's very different to ride. I get the impression that this is going to be more of a playful kind of a bike, but we'll find out about that. Having a quick look around, there are a lot of things that in my mind are missing. I've got no front brake lever, there's no clutch lever, there's no gear lever. All I've got is one foot brake where my rear brake should be, and that's going to do all three brakes. I just want to make a quick shout out to JFK for loaning us this for the week so we can try it out and have a bit of fun with it, and ultimately share it with you guys. So let's go and get learning together. Okay guys, you're going to notice that this is a different colour, and that's because the other one, something went wrong with it. So we're cruising along, the check engine light comes on, the battery light comes on, I'm like, oh dear, here we go. And then it gave me something about a VSS failure, didn't know what that was, and the ABS light came on, so I was like, it's brakes, okay, this is not cool. And then it went into limp mode. So I was like, okay, well I better get straight back to JFK and get them to sort it out. And now I'm on a different one. They think that they've fixed it, but in the sake of not messing around, because we're obviously filming right now, they were like, just take the demo and we'll sort that out later. So okay, cool. The experience that I'm having right now does seem quite bike-ish. You know, I've got my helmet on, I've got handlebars, and I'm doing bikey kind of a thing. I think probably a good thing though that might be inspiring for some people is that I think that this is very well seen by other cars. I've been riding this now for, what, 3-4 days, and I don't feel like people are not seeing me, which is nice. I think the thing with this is because it's weird and because it's got, actually those daytime running lights are actually really, really bright and you can see them from miles away. So I think that's a big help. They're always on, but I'd always ride two wheels with lights on anyway. But it's not very loud, so you're not going to hear the exhaust coming, which I actually, you know, a lot of people are like, oh, bikes are loud. Yeah, but that's actually a safety feature. So I was talking to Darren at JFK and he was telling me that all sorts of people are buying these and that the demographic is much wider than the Spider that they sell. And I can believe that. It does definitely have a different appeal. What he said was that there's a lot of people that are buying them for commuting. I've noticed a few things already about this that I actually wouldn't recommend this for commuting at all. Initially, if you're riding at or over 100 kilometers an hour, you're in the top of the power band and you're using a lot of fuel, so it's not overly economical. But the other thing is that you don't get the advantage of lane splitting. See, if I was on two wheels, I'd be at the front of that light, but I'm not. Oh. I wonder that if this is on a car registration, can you park in a motorcycle park? Because you're paying for a car registration. So effectively, for all legal intent and purpose, this is a car that you just happen to be on as opposed to in. But this is the thing about being on a bike. I don't necessarily want to just cruise around town and get looked at. I mean, this certainly gets a lot of looks, but I want to go on an adventure. Right, well, we've had a good fang around town, but I think the real thing that we need to do is get this out onto some touring roads, so I'm going to head north and see what I can find. So because this is a serious motoring show, I thought I would give you some performance feedback. Okay, 0 to 100, let's go. Full noise, it's fully pinned, can't go any further. And then that power band comes on just as you have to button off to not be against the law. See, that was probably pushing it for traction for this. You could feel the front start to kind of wiggle around a bit, and that's what gets scary about this. But I decided, you know, if I die, I die. Let's trust the machine, see what happens. But a lot of people are asking, what's it like to ride? Do you ride it like a quad bike? Do you ride it like, you know, do you lean into it? Oh, you're going to have to lean into it so much. You actually don't. When I first started riding it, I was, particularly on roads like this, I was very much overcompensating more so than I needed to for what I was trying to achieve. So the thing of it was that I was like fully getting my ass over the seat and really leaning in and dropping the shoulder. That's a complete waste of time. It doesn't need it. What it does need is for you to be very far back with your back and your arms out as long as you can, and then you basically just sort of grip with your inside knee and push with your outside hand, with the palm of your hand, and that's how you go around corners. The thing that's scary about that is because the bike, well, the trike's not leaning, but your G-force is pushing you out, so you're having to hold on while trying to be pushed sideways off the bike, and because you're not leaning, that force doesn't go straight down, it goes to the side, and that's weird. If you're riding this around the town and you're doing 50k and you're just buzzing around, it's good for a giggle. It's not particularly good at getting around tight corners, but other than that, like, it's good for a giggle. You know, you're doing something different and that's cool. What's really, really telling about this bike is when you start taking it on roads like I'm on now, because it is very, very different. The bike is constantly adjusting itself because you've got a wheel there and you've got a wheel there. You know, it's trying to kick up that way and it's trying to kick up that way, and it's trying to turn on its side. That is a weird feeling to get used to, and it's actually quite skittish with it. Like, I almost thought when I first got this out onto these kind of roads, I was like, wow, this is actually kind of sketchy. Like, if you don't know what you're doing, it's going to get weird. And the real way to ride this that I think I know is to just trust the grip. And there is a lot of grip, I will give it credit there. It's got a good amount of grip for what it is. Like, going over these undulations, the suspension is working, and it's working quite well, but it's a weird feeling. And you can probably tell, I don't know how well the camera's picking it up, but you can probably tell that there's a lot going on in those front wheels that's coming through to the handlebars, and I'm feeling it all, and I'm trying to stay relaxed and let it do its thing, because if you kind of just let it do its thing and it'll work itself out, you do absolutely fine. It's when you start trying to say, hey, no, I want you to do what I want you to do based on an unrealistic expectation of what a bike should be doing, it gets real squirrely. It's not overly difficult to control. Like, I haven't had any oh shit moments on this, but I've gone into a few bends where I thought, I could have taken that a little bit easier, and it's been forgiving, which I think that forgiveness is probably going to be one of the appeals. See, that's not so bad. I'm quite enjoying that. You don't really have to do a lot. There's not a lot of input required, and you do get to kind of, you know, you get the feel of it, and you're kind of throwing it around a bit. But it's weird. It's like, because I'm trying to hook the front tires into the grooves like I would in a car, but I've got handlebars, so there's just a lot of things that don't make sense. Suspension in general, it does seem to be quite good for what it does, but it is quite stiffly sprung. So as you might hear in my voice, I'm being thrown around a little bit, and I don't particularly love that. What this thing does do, which I appreciate, is it does give you that feeling of having handlebars and being open to the elements. That's nice. It does give you that sensation. It doesn't give you the sensation of leaning into bends, but if you weren't expecting that because you didn't come from riding two wheels, then you don't know what you're really missing. See, like, that was a 75 and I'm doing it at 60, and I'll just squeeze out of it. This actually does seem to respond well to powering out of turns. And the power band is an annoying place because the power band kicks in at about 6,000 RPM, which is just as the point where you reach the speed limit. And we just found traction control. That was really annoying. What it did is, because I'm assuming one of the front inside wheel left the ground, and it was like, oh shit, we're having an issue, and it just cut the power very briefly. That's what this thing does when you start to get squirrely with it. I've had it around a few bends where the front starts to go, and the front will actually start to skip, and that's how you lose this. Once you know that, that's okay, but this was one of the things I was struggling with, was that I had to try and figure out what's going to happen if something's going to happen, and how am I going to deal with that, because it's not what you're used to. So what it actually does is the front starts to push out when you're going around a bend, and it'll sort of understeer, and then the front, if you really start to push it, the front will start to bounce. And I'm not really keen on demonstrating that, if I'm honest. But doing 100k on these kind of roads because you've got 3 points of contact and not 2, it gives you effectively, as opposed to having it straight line, you've got a triangle that you're doing your bouncing of your geometry on, which is really, really, really weird. And that's another thing, you can't really pick your line on a road as much because you don't have a single line. You've actually got 3 lines, 1 for each wheel, because none of them are in line. In terms of long-term comfort though, this isn't actually as bad as I thought it was going to be. I've got quite a nice, long, drawn-out kind of a cruiser kind of a stance, and it's quite comfortable. The seat's not too bad, it's relatively soft. The longest ride I've done on this is probably about 3 hours, and by the end of it I was actually fine. I don't know what the top speed on this is. I'm not really keen to find out, if I'm honest, but it's a shame that power band is where it is, because if it was a little bit lower and you could enjoy the 80 to 110 as opposed to the 110 to, well, I won't say, but you can imagine, that would make this so much more playful on this kind of riding, because I'm not in the power band. So if I give it the full beans, I'm waiting, there's the power band at 98. And that's when it starts to come alive, and it really does come alive. It's like they've just swapped out a motor or nitrous or something. It makes a massive difference.
So we've put a fair few Ks on the Ryker now, and we've actually been able to manage quite a lot of varied riding as well. Around the city, this thing seems to be absolutely fine. It's economical, it's fun, and it's easy to ride. What I did notice was as soon as we got off the easy to ride stuff like motorways and onto real New Zealand roads, that's when this thing gets interesting. It moves around under you a lot and reacts to the road, much in the way that a lightweight sort of sports car would do, like a very lightweight sports car. And you're on top of it, you're not in it, you're on it, and you're fighting it a little bit. That might actually be intimidating for someone who's a first-time rider, which these kind of are appealing to, because there is that kind of market of people that don't know how to ride, so they're going to get something like this instead. Having said that, maybe if it's the first thing that you're going to be riding, you would understand that to be the case. However, when you've been on 2 wheels before and things are happening that wouldn't normally happen, it's a completely different mindset to being on 2 wheels. The way you go around corners, the way that you react to the road, the way that the bike moves under you. So there's a lot to consider. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter what you ride. If you're having a good time, that's what's important. I took this from my place in Cowcop up to Wellsford and back and had an absolute ball. That was actually a really good learning curve as well to figure out how to ride this properly. When I first started riding this, I was putting in a heap of work, moving my weight around and things like that, and it became very apparent very quickly that you don't have to do any of it. I think I'm at the point now where I've sort of figured it out, and there's a few little bits and pieces you can do just for comfort's sake in the way that you ride it, but you really don't actually have to do that much, which that I can understand is appeal to some people.
Actually guys, I do have just one request. If you dislike this vehicle, please don't dislike the video. If you dislike the film, by all means dislike it, and then let us know in the comments why. But if you enjoyed the film, give it a thumbs up. If it's your first time here, consider hitting that subscribe button. We do cool stuff like this all the time.